Hi, my name is Kate, and I have a question for Donald Trump. Now, a lot of people are going to watch this video and think that I'm being facetious or sarcastic, but I'm not. I genuinely have a real question for the President of the United States of America. Hi, Mr. President. I'm Kate. And very recently, you've been saying some really interesting and really compelling stuff about wanting to raise the birth rate, wanting women to have more babies. In particular, right now, there's this number floating around of $5,000 as like a birthing incentive, if you will. And I have a couple of clarifying questions that I was wondering if you could clear up. My first question is, how is insurance going to be handled? National average for giving birth in a hospital is somewhere around $28,000. Median coverage that insurance companies provide across the board is $13,000 to $16,000, depending on if you have a vaginal birth or a C-section. That number is also really interesting because that number is actually up about 8% from last year. So I would imagine that that number is probably only going to get higher next year. That's obviously if I can even afford insurance. I'm talking about any sort of prenatal classes or prenatal doctor's visits, which are really important, as I'm sure you know, for the health of both mother and baby. Obviously, we want everything to go well because when complications arise, the cost at the hospital gets incrementally higher, up to like 6 figures. So that's kind of my first question. My second question is, what happens afterwards? I think you're really going to like this next question because I know that you really care about making America great again. And I don't know if you know this or not, but America is actually the only high-income nation in the world that doesn't have a national parental paid leave law. There is 0 mandated paid leave for new parents. That actually kind of leads me to my next question, Mr. President, which is that I know you've been talking with a lot of different countries lately because of, the tariffs and stuff. And I wonder if you've spoken to anybody from a country like, say, Estonia or Sweden. The reason why I'm asking is because in Estonia, for example, their workers are guaranteed 82 weeks of maternity leave at 100% of their income that they were already making. Similarly, in Sweden, they get 69 weeks. Nice. Am I right? And the thing of it is that I'm a little bit confused because last year, the GDP of America was somewhere around about like $27 trillion. And Estonia's GDP was only $40 billion. I know you're great at math, but for the other people watching, that means that the United States made $26 trillion more than Estonia last year. So I guess I wonder, how can such a small nation making so much less than us afford to guarantee their workers 100% of their wages for 82 weeks? That also kind of leads me to my next question, which is that in the United States, we have no guaranteed postpartum support. In many countries, they get home visits, classes on how to take care of their new baby. I know you've been talking about sending women medals for having babies, but did you know that in some countries, they get useful things like crib mattresses and diapers and food and formula and information to help support new moms as they get ready for the baby? It's all free. You don't have to pay for any of it. Get back to that pesky insurance thing. Many women who are giving birth don't have insurance, which means that they may not be able to afford follow-up appointments. Even women who use Medicaid are only guaranteed 60 days of care postpartum, even though it has been repeatedly shown that women who are given care for 12 months develop less mood disorders and wind up with less problems across the board. Again, I know that you're focused on making America great again, and I love that for you. Now, Mr. President, as you're working on those incentives to boost that birth rate on up, I wonder if you've given any thought to the fact that America has the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed nation. Now, I'm not talking about those shithole countries, right? What's that? Over 50 countries with significantly lower GDPs actually have better maternal mortality rates than us. And universally, our economic peers actually experience maternal mortality rates that are about half of ours. And in America, Black women are 3.5 times more likely to die giving birth. Huh. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's pretend that everything goes well, right? I have the baby, I'm safe, I'm fine. I have an insurance and that $5,000 really knocks a little bit off the bill. I take my new blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby home to raise him as a proud American. Since I don't have paid maternity leave, that does mean that I'm gonna have to send little Donald Trump Jr. to daycare. I named him after you. Daycare costs about $12,000 a year on average. And in fact, in 39 states, infant care actually costs more than the local state college tuition. And in 45 states, it costs more than most people's mortgage payments. Then there's the question of, where am I going to raise Little Don Jr.? In fact, Mr. President, did you know that in 1946, the year that you were born, the average house cost $5,100? Again, I know you're great at math, but for the people watching at home, that means that the cost to income ratio was about 1.6. I'm having my American bundle of joy in 2025. This is where that I can tell that you are really working to make America great again, because things cost so much more money. That means that they're worth more, right? For instance, the average home cost in 2025 is $400,000. That means that the price to income ratio is about 5.6. Now, obviously, not all of us are real estate moguls like you, and so some of us have to rent. For about 22.4 million households, we're spending over 35% of our income on rent. The thing is, Mr. President, is that I know that you care about the well-being of every single American citizen. And obviously, as women start having more babies, you want those babies to grow up big and strong, right? And how do you get a little American baby to grow up big and strong? You gotta feed them! Currently, food prices are up about 2.4% year over year. Don't even get me started about the cost of eggs. Joe Biden, am I right? That's just feeding him, not to mention clothing him, doctor's appointments, school, and then they're saving for college. Now, Mr. President, you've made it abundantly clear that you are not a big fan of student debt. So obviously, as a responsible parent, I want to save up for little Donald Jr.'s education. I don't want to burden him with $100,000 of debt straight out of college, especially if you're going to start taking it straight out of his paycheck. Obviously, little Donnie Jr. is going to go to college on a full-ride football scholarship like a good American, but if, for say, he couldn't for some reason, I'd be looking at between $40,000 and $160,000 for his education. Of course, then I, as a concerned parent, also wonder, what is little Donnie Jr. going to learn in college? I've watched with great admiration as you sliced and diced the Department of Education and defunded public schools and libraries. Wouldn't want little Donnie getting any ideas, would we? Now, obviously, Mr. President, I know that I'm speaking in a lot of hypotheticals, because a lot of my concerns about raising a child in 2025 are based on problems that other countries have. Like, as you know, no child in America is ever born disabled. No child in America ever gets cancer or some sort of chronic condition that can cost a lot of money to support. This is America. Of course our kids aren't going to get sick from Victorian-era diseases. We have vaccines for that. American women are built for tough, and that means that we always bounce straight back after giving birth. No long-term effects on our bodies, our brains, our ability to raise our children. Now, Mr. President, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but as an American, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for thinking of women. Thank you for thinking of children. The thing of it is, Mr. President, is that it may not look like it on the surface, but you and I actually have a lot in common. I know what it's like to want agency. I know what it's like to want to prove yourself. In this great nation of ours, no one deserves to be puppeted and told what to do with their body or mind. Just like you definitely are making all of your own decisions and not being influenced by any outside forces in any way. You, Mr. President, are your own man, and I respect that. Mr. President, I say this with all sincerity. If you could get back to me with answers to those questions, I would be delighted to have your baby. God bless you, and God bless these United States of America. Amen.